What's up, everybody? This is Hall of Fame wide receiver Terrell Owens here, a.k.a. T.O. Get your popcorn ready. Do a favor. Leave my guy Conor a 5-star rating after the show. Listen to it. Give him some feedback. And also, if you want to listen to my podcast as well, check it out. Subscribe, share. You don't need to leave a 5-star rating. We're 5-star. I'm 5-star all the time. My podcast is called Get Your Popcorn Ready with T.O. and Hatch. Again, check out both of those podcasts. And hey, check it out, listen, and subscribe.
All right, thanks for tuning in to Eagles Brawl of the Brawl Network. However you're listening, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or whatever podcast platform you are listening on. We greatly appreciate it. Got my co-host Tyler Steege in the house today, back on the airwaves. Like our Eagles Brawl Twitter account said, your mother's favorite podcast co-host is back on the radio. Tyler, you hit me up. You said, man, I'm tired of listening about this disrespect, the noise to Zach Ertz. I need to get on the airwaves and preach the good word of the Eagles' best tight end in franchise history. And I agree. Right. I think it's time to go on there and start praising really their best and most consistent offensive player catching the ball. Because really, I would say let's just go ahead and say it. Their best and most consistent player outside of probably Jason Kelce would be Zach Ertz. So we need to go in and discuss why we believe that, why we believe he's so great. He's kind of getting to the point where he's being underappreciated by fans. I believe because, and I'm sure you'll agree, mostly because of broken tackles. He doesn't break that many tackles, which you're going to live and die by some players' flaws. Every elite player has a flaw still. There's always something in their game that you're like, if I'm a Julio Jones critic, I think he could score more, and he doesn't. There's my criticism of him. So I can criticize any of the greatest players out there and still acknowledge how great they are, and I think Zach Ertz is no different. Tyler, preach a good word, my friend.
There's a lot of pent-up aggression here, and this is years going. Zach Ertz has been, like you said, the most consistent thing outside of Jason Kelce probably for the last 3 years. He's led the team in receiving for 3 straight years. When you're talking about the talent on the Eagles, you always hear the last 2 years with injuries, Deshaun, Mike Wallace, no speed, no depth at receiver. Well, the only one that's been consistent is Zach Ertz. And because of that, he's gotten a lot of attention from defenses, and he still produces. And then, like you said, I think it's yak ability and blocking, and we're going to get into both. There's narratives surrounding Ertz, but he's a tremendous player. He's on pace to be a Hall of Famer. It's what sparked this entire thing were the Madden ratings. We'll get it. Go ahead.
So here's my thing about Zach Ertz before we get into all that. What is the number one thing that we complain about Eagles wide receivers the most, would you think, besides separation, I guess? Because I think that's another thing you could say. Yeah, okay. So from 2015 and on, Zach Ertz has been targeted over 100 times. That's a lot of targets. That's obviously showing you the number one possession guy in Philadelphia. The most drops he's had in his career are 7. That was in 2015. In 2018, when he broke that record for receptions by a tight end, he had 154 targets, and he only dropped the ball 6 times.
Yeah.
You need that type of reliability in a passing error league. And to get that from your tight end and not from a wide receiver is kind of unheard of, to be honest with you.
And before, it's almost as if people are like, hey, Ertz is good at receiving, let's move on. But no, let's actually hone in and actually focus in on what he can do and bring to the table. He's an incredible tight end. I tweeted that he's the best receiving tight end in the NFL, and I stand by that. There's no tight end that requires more attention. There's no tight end that creates more separation. There's no tight end that is a better route runner. And when you talked about you can find a hole in everyone's game. Yes, he doesn't create yards after catch, but he creates so much separation that is technically, I mean, you're getting yards there. I mean, if you were to talk about like a Travis Kelce or a George Kittle, because those are the top 3 tight ends in the NFL, and you're nitpicking when it comes to, who you prefer. George Kittle is absolutely the best blocking tight end. But when you're talking about the gap between his blocking ability and Ertz's receiving ability to Kittle, that is where the conversation starts of what's more valuable to you and what's more valuable to your offense. And like to the Eagles offense, I think if you slid George Kittle in there, I don't know if he would be as productive as Zach Ertz. I don't think he would be nearly as productive. And I think if you vice versa, I think if Ertz was in Shanahan's offense, I think that his yak ability would be a little bit better with the misdirections, the play actions. So I think context does matter. And it's not as simple as just, this guy has 1,300 yards or 1,400 yards. Everything is different. And like I said, I mean, the biggest thing, the most important thing to me, and we talk about the Eagles' speed, Carson Wentz is the happiest person when it comes to Jalen Reagor, Deshaun Jackson, the Goodwin, the addition of speed. But the second most happy person is Zach Ertz. He finally has some space around. He's going to be able to work with space. I think it's crazy. I think is Ertz entering his 8th year? It's his 8th year, I think.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of wild to say, but I don't think that we've seen the best Zach Ertz. I don't, as far from production wise, I don't think that we've seen the best Ertz. I think his early years, he was sharing time with Brent Selleck. And then finally got the starting role, but he was playing with quarterbacks like Sanchez, Bradford. So finally he has this chemistry with Wentz, but now it's been injuries, and not to make excuses because he's been ultra productive despite all of these hurdles that he had to overcome. But when you do add in speed and you have Wentz entering his 5th year, he's a seasoned veteran now. I expect Ertz for the next 2 to 3 years to be, again, in the conversation for the best tight end in the league. I don't think that these 1,000 yards, 100 catch seasons are close to being done. And tight ends age like wine too. I mean, that's another thing. People are talking about trading him. It's like, why? He's still in his prime.
Zach Ertz to the Eagles offense is what Michael Thomas is to the Saints offense.
I like that, and I think that's fair.
It's exactly the truth. It's the truth. It's exactly the truth. And I take away the statistics and all that stuff. I mean, because Michael Thomas has crazy targets and reception numbers, but so does Zach Ertz, obviously. And he led the league. I mean, he set a record for tight ends in receptions 2018. But the thing about Zach Ertz that people harp on the most is the blocking. And even last year, you saw it. The Eagles have shied away from putting him out there in pass blocking for situations. In 2018, he was out there for 47 pass blocking snaps. In 2019, he was out there for 22. So
and how can he? Why would they make him block?
Because Goddard's better at it. So not only that, it frees up Zach Ertz to do more situational stuff anyway. So it's important that Goddard's better than him in this aspect. That the Eagles accept that already. And move on and use Ertz as a receiver because the receivers aren't producing anyway. So
exactly.
My thing because harping on Zach Ertz for the blocking is annoying. If he's not good at blocking, fine. He's good at everything else that I need a tight end to do. And especially in an Eagles offense where you cannot rely on your wide receivers, and I'd argue in 2020 it's going to be slightly better in 2019. It's not going to be that much better. I don't know if Deshaun can play a full season. I don't know what this pandemic's going to do to rookies like Reagor. I don't know what's going to do to a guy who had a struggling rookie year who needs the second offseason to get better and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I don't know how Alshon's going to heal. I think this is another year where you're going to need Zach Ertz to step up. But yes, you're right. He finally has speed on the outside that can create more space over the middle for him to operate in the middle of the field. And he's always going to be Wentz's first read. And no matter what. He's going to lead the team in targets. He's going to lead the team in receptions again. That's not going to change.
Absolutely. And to piggyback,
he has better opportunities. He has better matchups. So yes, I agree with you that you could see a crazy, maybe fantasy type production year for Zach Ertz because he's going to have I said on the show, I think Dallas Goedert might lead the Eagles in touchdown receptions. But if it's not him, it's going to be Ertz. It's going to be one of them.
Right. Yeah, and just real quick because I'm forgetful, to piggyback on the blocking thing, I think like week 3 it was against the Lions. I don't know if you remember, but Deshaun was hurt. Alshon was hurt. I think J-Jaw was the team's number 1. There was a point when the Eagles were in the red zone where the Lions bracketed Zach Ertz. They just put 2 defenders on him. So if you're putting your best receiving threat as a blocker, he just can't. For the last 2 years, he can't be asked to block when it's a passing down. He just can't. Like you're taking
2018,
away.
I was gonna say in 2018 though, that was his best year as a blocker by far.
Yeah,
and it was in pass blocking. Run blocking wasn't that great.
It's not as if he's incapable. He's not an incapable blocker. They run 2 tight ends.
He hasn't given up a sack the last 2 years. He's only given up 4 pressures total the last 2 years. But last year, like I said, they barely had him on the field for pass blocking. It was only 22 snaps. But the year prior, in Guyer's rookie year, when they were still trying to figure him out, he had 47 pass blocking snaps, and he only gave up 3 total pressures in total. And he had a 71.3 pass blocking grade by PFF, which is above average. So, I mean, it's not like he's how he – because I know that's the number one thing that we'd harp on him the most is like, wow, Zach Ertz really can't block. But in 2018, I think he destroyed that narrative. In 2019, the Eagles used him more as Zach Ertz rather than what he's not the most comfortable doing.
Exactly. Use him to your strength. There's no point to put him as a blocker. Again, it's not as if he's incapable. The Eagles are one of the best running teams in the league. They run high two tight end sets more than anybody. So it's not as if he's a liability when he's on the field when it comes to run blocking. And I mean, pass blocking to me in today's NFL, if you're having to have your tight end line in and have to pass block, I mean, to me that just is a red flag when it comes to his receiving ability. It just isn't. I don't really look for that. Can you catch? Can you create separation? And can you run block? Those are the things that I'm looking for to tight end. I mean, there are going to be special occasions or rare occasions for you to pass block, but to me, I kind of overlook that when I'm evaluating tight ends.
Here's what's important to me about Zach Ertz that I want to elaborate on, and then we'll go into like the Madden rating and where we have him rank as our tight ends in the NFL, because I think it's a little fun discussion. But the thing that's most important to me about Zach Ertz that everybody talks about is Carson Wentz's passer rating when targeting Zach Ertz. Ever since Carson Wentz has entered the league in 2016, he has not had a passer rating below 96 when targeting Zach Ertz. It was 96 his rookie year, 114.2 in 2017, 100.1 in 2018, which was a mix of Wentz and mix of Foles, and then 101.6 in 2019 last year, the full season of Wentz. You can't beat that type of production. When you're that reliable and your quarterback is that productive when targeting you, that's an elite tight end. If a tight end's doing that, if a tight end's producing at that level of a receiver for your quarterback, I mean, everybody knows that Zach Ertz is the Eagles' offensive security blanket. But that type of production, like when you see those numbers up close, you're like, whoa, he's doing a lot better than what we think he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I did his last 2 seasons average, and again, this is with no deep threat. Last 2 years, 2018, 2019, he's averaged per season 102 catches, 1,039 yards, 7 touchdowns. And his catch rate, this is what's bonkers. His catch rate is 70%. To give perspective, Devontae Adams is 65, DeAndre Hopkins is 69%. So he's got a better catch rate than 2 what's called elite receivers. And then, like you said, I mean, just the security thing. I mean, he's just so consistent. The fans that are just like willing to just trade him, or that have discussed it. And I know it's just off-season talk because people get bored with their own lives. It's nuts to me. But I mean, you're also just think, like you just said, Carson Wentz, the rating, these guys rely on him. This is Carson Wentz's favorite target, and it's very apparent. So you can't just think of and this is a
people that want to trade him. People that want to trade him can't comprehend the Eagles' offense. They can't comprehend 12 personnel.
It's nuts.
Not even just to go into the Eagles' offense and what they do as what they run, because I think a lot of people harp on Doug Pederson. We'll get into that a little bit in the episode, but the Eagles are a 12 personnel offensive system more than anything. And obviously that's not a whole entire system. It's a West Coast offense with spread concepts, but the majority of their lineups are in 12 personnel. You don't need to trade a tight end just because you have Goddard. in the wings. You don't need to get rid of Goddard just because he's a great tight end that you can get trade value for. The Eagles need these 2 tight ends because they can't even trust their wide receiver position. The Eagles are in no position to talk about trading away their number 1 target when they have an aging Deshaun Jackson who is questionable on the team right now with everything going on. They can't trade Zach Ertz when their first-round pick wide receiver comes in learning the offense during a pandemic where we're supposed to social distance, and all they have right now to go off of is virtual team meetings. It doesn't work like that. They can't trade their number 1 target when Alshon Jeffrey goes to Josina Anderson, bashes the starting quarterback, and has been on a sharp decline his entirety of his contract extension. They can't trade Zach Ertz when J.J. Arcega-Whiteside looked as bad as he did his rookie year. They're not in a position. The Eagles are in no position whatsoever to trade away their most reliable, best target.
And he's still got at least 5 years. At least 5 more years.
To maximize a trade value on a player because his backup is good too, in a position where they use both of them, that's like saying we should trade, let's just say, theoretically speaking, Jalen Reagor pans out, and the Eagles draft a wide receiver in this upcoming draft. You're going to come to a point in both of their contracts where you're going to have to pay them a year. One you're going to pay a year after you pay the other. So people are going to tell me that they'll say, trade Jalen Reagor because your other wide receiver is good.
Right.
So you don't have to pay both of them? That doesn't make sense. You need 2 wide receivers. Well, Conor, why would you need 2 tight ends? Oh, because the Eagles run 12 personnel 70% of their offensive snaps.
You can't fucking complain about lack of talent and then want to trade your best receiving talent.
You can't complain about lack of receiving talent and want to trade your head and shoulders best wide receiver.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Because that's what he is. It's not even a tight end at this point. Stop positioning him at this point because he's your best receiver, period.
Yep. He's a receiver.
Here's the thing where you and I talked about where I think this improves a ton because, yes, he can do it. If you target Zach Ertz 10-plus yards down the field on the outside left, he's incredibly productive. Last year, the Eagles were 10 for 14 targeting him out there, 156 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Wentz had a 108 rating targeting him out there, but they had no speed. Deshaun Jackson for a couple games was their speed.
I
would love to see what he does. Yeah, because we can go back I'll go back while you're talking to see what he did in 2017 in that production-wise. But to get him out there, because look, most of the stuff right now is underneath the hash marks with Zach Ertz, especially last year. In the middle, between the numbers, the Eagles were 37 for 44 targeting him for 314 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Once had 119.1 NFL passer rating targeting him between the numbers before the first down hash mark. 37 for 44. That's insane.
Yeah.
314 yards.
Yeah. This is he's probably the most I'm excited about to see with this speed. I mean, obviously I want to see Reagor, I want to see the receivers, but Ertz with this much space, like I said, I'm excited to see the best Zach Ertz because we haven't seen the best Zach Ertz.
I went back to Zach Ertz 2017 season to see what his receiving directions were, and I'm right. So it wasn't the outside left that he perfected that year, though. It was really the between the numbers, past the hash marks. The Eagles were 16 for 21 targeting him, 221 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, but Wentz had 125.3 NFL passer rating. So you add that speed because you're probably going to put Goodwin in the slot a lot. You're probably going to put Deshaun Jackson in the slot a lot. You're probably going to put Jalen Reagor in the slot a lot because you're actually looking at a wide receiver core that isn't defined by specific roles anymore. Because Aguilar can't win on the outside, he wins in the slot. Jordan Matthews doesn't win on the outside, he wins in the slot. They don't have that in their wide receiver core anymore. They can move guys all around. You're going to see Zach Ertz win between the numbers. And I would still say the outside left a lot next year, especially considering the fact that I think he's going to line up at X a lot with Alshon Jeffrey being out. I don't think J.J. Arcega-Whiteside with this offseason is really going to propel him to be productive right off the bat. I think you're going to see Zach Ertz line up on the outside left a lot next year. I think I will keep your eye out for it. Past the 10-yard, past the first down, look at him on the outside left and see how productive he is next year with all the speed added in the slot. and on the at the Z position. I think it's going to be great. I think you're going to see a crazy Zach Ertz too. I just look at when you look back all throughout the seasons and see what made him successful when the Eagles did have speed and what makes him successful when the Eagles don't have speed, and you try to form an opinion together of what you're going to see in this new offense if it's fully healthy and you do have that speed. Zach Ertz looks like he's going to have a great year.
Hell yeah. Yes, sir. By the way, let's just get right into it. How the fuck is Rob Gronkowski above Zach Ertz when it comes to Madden? What's going on? I mean, I'm an avid Madden player, real quick, and the ratings are always bonkers to me. Just every year, like
I hate complaining about them all the time because they're always wrong, and not only that,
I just can't.
The ratings adjuster's a Cowboys fan. The ratings adjuster's a Cowboys fan, so like you always have to think like if there's any sour feelings that go into making these ratings because Zach Ertz kills the Cowboys.
Oh my gosh, dude!
I mean, Miles Sanders an 80, but Geis an 81.
Wentz an 84. Ertz and just a 90. Darius Slay was I think an 89.
Yeah. It's just Miles Sanders though was the biggest robbery.
I agree.
I mean, it's still weird to get Zach Ertz a 90 and Gronk a 95.
I expected Sanders to be kind of low. I didn't expect him to get too much hype, but the Geis rating was more so like
right. That doesn't. If you're gonna make that argument for Sanders, then you better give that for Geis. He's proven nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think people media will come around.
That slide week 16. That slide week 16 definitely.
That probably did. Yeah.
Oh, man. Sanders had a better year than Josh Jacobs, and they felt fine giving Josh Jacobs an 88.
I don't know if he had a better year than Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs had a better rushing year. Sanders had a better overall year.
That's
in
tough.
every aspect.
I'm high on both of them.
He had more scrimmage yards. More yards from scrimmage.
Well, Jacob Smith.
I like Josh Jacobs too, but
Jacob Smith the game because of his shoulder. So I'm high on both.
Josh Jacobs is not a good receiver. That's not where he thrives. He's a good runner.
I think he'll be improved a lot in Gruden's year and year 2.
Oh, he was good. He's a good running back. He's all 2 down back. That's why the Raiders went right away to get a receiving back in this draft. They drafted Liv Bodden immediately. That's why and you and I did this episode. That's why I'm ashamed that you forgot that already. That I said why Miles Sanders is in for such a big year is because you look at even the Raiders with Josh Jacobs who got drafted before him.
I'm not. I don't want you to think that I'm hating on Sanders. I'm not hating.
I don't think you're hating. I think Miles Sanders is better than Josh Jacobs personally.
Ooh, and that's where I think that they're both extremely productive backs. But
what a cop out!
No, I don't know. If I had to take one, I would take Josh Jacobs. I would. Yeah,
all right.
I would
Yikes for that. Because then
I think
the Eagles offense where you need the running back to catch the ball. That's Josh Jacobs not going to play as much as Miles Sanders will. But all right, that's up to you, bud. That's all you. Anyway, so let's get back. Let's get into what we were actually continue the show and what our topics were we discussed. Rodney McLeod. I made him in my top 20 list, and we need to get your top 20 list for the airwave. By the way, people.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, get back to what
yours is better than Johnny's, dude. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm about to say that's not a popular opinion. He won. I know. Anyways, let's get back.
I'm glad that we're talking Rodney. I don't know how you're gonna describe him, but he to me is one of the most important defensive players for the Eagles this year.
Absolutely.
He's I don't know who can play single high other than him.
No, they don't have a safety that can play single high.
Yeah, it's the ground that Rodney McLeod covers is special for this defense. He's super, like if he gets hurt, and that's what I mean when it comes to value. If he were to get hurt, I think that they have to put Avonte Maddox there. I don't think that there's any other realistic replacement. And I don't know if you guys remember Avonte Maddox against Washington last year, but he did not play well. He had some awful angles. Terry McLaurin's touchdown was one of them. Maddox is, I mean, he's still improving. I know that they're kind of throwing him in nickel, outside, safety. He's kind of a hybrid, but Rodney McLeod and what he brings to this defense, and then you add a corner like Darius Slay, and we kind of talked about it on a previous episode, but we're only going to see a better Rodney McLeod now that he actually has a corner that he could rely on and not have to shade to one side, or he can shade to one side and say, "Hey, Darius, you do your thing, you lock up that side." But Rodney's range is special for this defense.
What makes me mad is people talk as if Rodney McLeod's bad. That's just not the case. It's not the case at all. The thing that I think that my number one issue with Rodney McLeod is probably missed tackles. But
yep.
I mean, this defense is susceptible of missed tackles, especially when you're playing that. That people really underrate how tough that is to play that center field position. There's so much space for one man to cover.
20 yards. It's like 20 yards from the line of scrimmage.
For one man to cover. Man to cover too. It's just so much. So I give majority of the missed tackles a slide for that position specifically because I understand the nuances of it and everything like that. But in coverage last year, he was stellar. He was stellar in coverage last year. Quarterbacks had a 52 passer rating when targeting him. He did give up a touchdown, but he had 2 interceptions. He had 4 pass breakups. He was targeted 30 times, allowing 16 receptions for 163 yards. There was nothing bad about his play last year.
Who do you think leads the Eagles in interceptions this year? Would you say Slay?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
actually, Nicole Roby-Coleman.
Oh, that's a good one. I think those are the top. I think McLeod has a chance.
I think 4 weeks into the 2020 season, I think teams are going to learn not to target Slay.
Yeah, right.
Shy away from him. I think they're going to learn that, okay, he actually returned to a system that he was drafted into, so he does know it, and he can play it well. Let's stay away from him. Let's pick on, whoever wins the cornerback 2 job and Nicole Roby-Coleman and take our chances. I think you're seeing more likely of that. Because with the Lions, they had a good secondary. It wasn't like, they traded Quandre Diggs and things got weird. After they went the midway through the season, they just started to deteriorate their secondary and traded them away. But over the years, they've had other players where the Eagles just had Malcolm Jenkins, and Rodney McLeod, and that's their safeties. Their quarterback position's been awful. So I think when you look at the Eagles and Slay, because I think there's still question marks if he's on the downside of his career or not. But I think give it 5 weeks into the season where he asserts himself as still the dominant player that he is, teams will start saying, okay, we need to look otherwise and target the other side of the field. So that's why I think that's going to be tough for Slay to lead in interception. So that's what I'm thinking, maybe Roby-Coleman. But I think a lot of people's vote would be Slay. I wouldn't even have thought of that. I think a lot of people's vote would be Slay, though, because Slay does get a lot of interceptions. I just don't think he's going to be targeted that much.
Especially with the pass rush.
Yeah. But no, go back to McLeod. So his coverage grade last year was 70, which is above average for PFF terms, but he's never had a coverage grade below 70 with the Eagles. It's always been a steady. It was 77.4 in 2017, 78.2 in 2018, but he barely played. It was only 108 coverage snaps. He played 639 coverage snaps last year. He had a 70 grade. It's not Rodney McLeod. And again, I think this season you'll see the best that Rodney McLeod has to offer in terms of playing for the Eagles because he's 2 years removed from the ACL, MCL. He finally has that cornerback one, like you said, with Darius Slay. I think the cornerback picture is a lot brighter than it's ever been during his tenure in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
The versatility that they have at safety now, because it's not like you're putting McLeod out there with Jenkins and Marcus Epps or Andrew Sadejo. It's you're putting McLeod, Myles, Parks, Kayvon Wallace, Grayland Arnold, who I like as an undrafted free agent. I think he's going to end up making the team. They have a lot of depth where they're going to throw some other safeties out there that help a lot more instead of 2 aging safeties in McLeod and Jenkins. I think that also has to play into your factor. But to act like Rodney McLeod, especially last year, Rodney McLeod was better against the run than Malcolm Jenkins was. He had 20 run stops.
Yeah.
As a single high safety, he had 21 stops. So it wasn't even like he was in position that Jenkins was to stop the run. He was in a worse position to do it, and he had 20 run stops playing the single high position.
Yeah, them retaining McLeod and deciding to move on from Jenkins, in my head, it made a lot of sense because, again, going back to the single high thing, Jenkins just is not a single high safety. He is near the line of scrimmage, basically a hybrid linebacker at this point in his career. I think that's much easier to replace. So when they retained McLeod, it made sense in my head before it happened, and so when it did happen, it was almost further confirmation.
You could argue because again, it was his quarterback's target when targeting him last year had a 52 passer rating, which was a career high for him. Like to get everything else has been that was his career best for him. Excuse me, is what I meant to say. I think the Eagles thought Rodney McLeod at this point can give us more going forward than Malcolm Jenkins can on an extension.
100%.
I think you could argue Malcolm Jenkins' play was deteriorating. I think take away age out of the equation, like you just said, because Malcolm Jenkins cannot play the single high position. Rodney McLeod can. Take the age out of the equation. Give Rodney McLeod that extra boost of because watching football over the years, I'm sure many viewers will know as well. When you come that second year, you come back from that ACL injury is usually your best. You're fully healthy. Your legs are you feel like your best. And Rodney McLeod still's been training this whole entire offseason with Malcolm Jenkins. He's been training with Will Parks. Will Parks told me on this podcast last time that the last 2 offseasons he's been training with Rodney McLeod and Will Parks. So there's already going to be a chemistry built there. There's already chemistry built with Jalen Mills. Rodney McLeod, I think you're looking at, again, he had a career best when targeted passer rating last year. I think you're looking at somebody whose play is going to continue to get better for the Eagles, and that's why they thought giving the 2-year deal at a reasonable rate was a smart move rather than paying Jenkins an extension because you can get better play from McLeod moving forward in his role than you could in Jenkins' role, especially when you consider the fact that they pretty much took Jenkins' salary and turned it into Darius Slay's cap hit for this year, Nicole Roby-Coleman's cap hit for this year, Will Parks cap hit for this year, Kayvon Wallace, Jalen Mills cap hit for this year. So they value quantity in this specific role that they're trying to replace Malcolm Jenkins. I think they did the right way of going about it. I think they would have had a much, much tougher time replacing McLeod's role. All right, so we'll wrap this up real quick with going on to Doug Pederson, my friend. Those CBS rankings came out. We haven't really had any good time to discuss it real quick. So I want to go ahead and get into it and see how you feel. CBS Sports ranked Doug Pederson the 9th best head coach.
Let's start this segment off with saying that these CBS rankings have been god awful. Their safety rankings,
they've been awful. They've been so bad.
But I think this coach one was probably the worst.
No, it was the worst because you have you have Doug Pederson who's won a Super Bowl behind guys like Kyle Shanahan who haven't. Sean McVay, who blew it against the same team that Doug Pederson beat with his backup quarterback, completely blew it. I thought he was an offensive genius. They went out there and put up 3 points. Goff really shit the bed, but, Doug Pederson had his backup quarterback in a position to put up 41 points, but that's just my take on that. When they talk about coaches like Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, Sean Payton, and maybe even Mike Tomlin to put Doug Pederson behind, I could agree with that. If it was my rankings, I would have Doug Pederson 4th behind Peyton, Reed, and Belichick. I think Tomlin's arguable. I think John Harbaugh's arguable. To me, John Harbaugh, I think, is riding the curtails of Greg Roman and Lamar Jackson's offensive success, to be honest with you right now. I think John Harbaugh's a great head coach, though. I do think he's top 5. But I think the Ravens ship was derailing to the point where they had to take this chance on the athlete, the star that Lamar Jackson was, and then you get an offensive coordinator who performed well and took a team to a Super Bowl in an offense that Lamar Jackson is best suited for, like Greg Roman did with the 49ers and Colin Kaepernick. So I think that's what really rejuvenated the Ravens right now in their offense. But I wouldn't put John Harbaugh above.
No, I mean, to me, when you're nitpicking, because these guys are all really good head coaches.
Yeah, they are. It's not like this list is. It's not like they chose the wrong coaches for the top 10.
It's just
the
a shitty
order that they put them in is weird.
Right.
Would you put Pete Carroll above Doug Pederson?
No, and that's what I was gonna go on and say here is Pete Carroll. I may have Tomlin above him, but Carroll, Harbaugh, and you can throw Tomlin in there when I'm ranking a head coach. I want to know if you're going to be play calling. because that is a consistent thing, right? So, Pete Carroll, these guys have to rotate offensive and defensive coordinators, which means that your offense and defense can be inconsistent. So if I am ranking head coaches, I have a hard time when I'm nitpicking putting a guy who's just like a special teams coach or, the leader of men. I want a guy who can call an offense because that is going to be my offense for the next 10 years or so in an ideal world. So like Shanahan to me gets a bump. McVay gets a bump. Pederson gets a bump to me. And then that's what makes, I think, Bill Belichick so crazy is his level of consistency while he does kind of control the defense, but he doesn't call plays, I don't believe. But that's why Andy Reid to me is number 2. I don't mind that. But there's just no way you can justify putting Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan above Doug Pederson. They all
that's recency bias.
Yeah, they've all made. No coach has dealt with more injuries than Doug Pederson, and he's still made the playoffs 3 consecutive years with a Super Bowl win, and he scored 41 damn points with a backup. And then you have Sean McVay shit in the bed with 3 points with a starter. It's Shanahan. The blame goes to the quarterback, right?
Right.
Sean McVay,
that's my point.
Goff. Yeah.
That we said off air. For Sean McVay, if you put Doug Pederson, if you put Jared Goff in Nick Foles' shoes in 2017 when they played the Patriots Super Bowl 52, Doug Pederson would have Jared Goff in a better position to beat the Patriots than Sean McVay had Jared Goff in to beat the Patriots. When things started shitting the bed with Jared Goff and the pressure started getting to him and he couldn't operate, Sean McVay couldn't do anything else outside of that. I think Doug Pederson would get creative and get stuff done outside of that. It wasn't like the Eagles scored on the Patriots in crazy, in really scripted ways. They scored on them with a Philly special. That didn't take Nick. That was Trey Burton throwing that pass. It wasn't Nick Foles. So, when things started going awry with Jared Goff, Sean McVay didn't know what to do at that point. When things started going awry with Jimmy Garoppolo, when he couldn't make the passes to win the Super Bowl, when he couldn't hit Emmanuel Sanders for that touchdown, Kyle Shanahan leaned on the run. It still didn't win in the Super Bowl. So,
gotta have cojones. I
think, Doug Pederson, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, Brandon Graham, that had nothing to do with Doug Pederson, but Doug Pederson took his backup quarterback who started, 2 games after Carson Wentz went down, and then 2 postseason starts before that Super Bowl, and beat the best head coach all time with the arguably best quarterback all time. Dropped 41 on them with his backup quarterback. So, if Sean McVay can't do that, but Doug Pederson can, why is he ranked above him in this list?
Because
if you're going to go off of regular season wins, if we're going to start, if we're going to award people for regular season wins, Chip Kelly should still be a head coach in the NFL.
I love how CBS. He even doubled down on the tweet.
He doubled down horribly too. And I know we're a little late on this discussing this topic, and I think a lot of people would disagree with maybe the John Harbaugh takes I had, but this dude, his reasonings are awful. Reasonings are awful. Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, is a good quarterback. Good enough. I don't want to say he's great or anything, but he's good enough to obviously go to a Super Bowl with. Because I don't think he played extremely bad, and it was really his first full season starting last year.
You said Jimmy G?
Yeah. But Kyle Shanahan still doesn't have a successful head coach record, which, again, the 49ers were in a complete rebuild. They gave him a 7-year contract for a reason when they first hired him.
Shanahan had no reason to lose that Super Bowl. The Niners overall were the better team. Yes, the Chiefs had Pat Mahomes, but overall, the defense, well-balanced, the Niners were the best team in football last year. They should have won, and they blew that. And living in California, being next
here's
to
my thing with these coaches.
Fans.
Let's just say, because I can remember this fondly, when these coaches, their quarterbacks make a mistake, they didn't do anything to help bounce back from those mistakes. When Nick Foles throws that ball up to Alshon Jeffrey and it goes off his hands and it's picked, the Eagles stayed calm and continued going out there. And most teams could fall apart after that quarterback mistake, especially against a team that's being coached by Bill Belichick and ran by Tom Brady. So I think
I think a lot of these.
It's not even just Kyle Shanahan. This Super Bowl wasn't even just Kyle Shanahan's first offensive fallout.
Right, Falcons.
It wasn't
too.
his first time. Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to put him
28-3,
above
man.
this list for what he's doing with the 49ers, he's been part of 2 sinking offensive ships in 2 Super Bowls.
I'm a firm believer that people who make these type of lists, obviously you want to get a reaction. I do think that there's a narrative, and it's a correct one, that Eagle fans are very passionate. So you just disrespect the team a little bit, lower the rankings a little bit, whether it be with Wentz or Pederson, and it causes a stir. I think
behind it.
I think it can be intentional because some of these, and I mean they're doing a job because we're talking about it now.
If Pete Carroll, look here, because a lot of people are gonna be like, well, I don't know about putting Pete Carroll above Doug Pederson, but I do. If Pete Carroll never finds Russell Wilson, he's never the head coach he is right now.
Yeah, and that's where, like, what is the definition of a coach? Like, I mean, how much does the draft, No,
because we have history go back off of. He wasn't anything with the Patriots as a head coach.
Yeah,
he didn't do anything. I mean, I think they took him to the wild card round with Tavares Jackson, but they were 7-9 at the.
I agree. I don't think Peterson, I don't think Carroll is a. I think he's a great startup coach.
He hasn't accomplished anything outside of Russell Wilson, so the quarterback there made the picture better.
Yeah,
you can't say they work hand in hand well together, but when you're talking about people talk about Belichick made Brady and debate that. There's no debate to this. Russell Wilson made Pete Carroll. There's no debate. It's proven.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Russell Wilson is the Seahawks right now and has been since.
Doug Pederson has won with different quarterbacks. So, again, an edge he has over Pete Carroll. People are just going into longevity with this. This dude's really going – he's not even going into longevity with this. He's going into regular season win percentage.
It's huge, man.
Reasoning. It's like I just said, Chip Kelly – was what, 27-20?
Yeah,
right?
he was 20 for the Eagles. I think he was 20-12. I think he was 20-12 after his first.
No, because he was 7-9 2016. So he was 20-12. Yeah, so he's 20-12
and then,
the first 2 seasons, and then he went 7-9, 6-9. Sorry, 6-9, because he got fired the week prior to this. So he was like 26-18.
I don't like talking about Chip.
26-21. Still, that's a positive win percentage. So this guy would put him on the list then. That's what his argument is. Because he keeps arguing these regular season win percentages. Dude, that doesn't mean shit. You get I've seen the Giants and Tom Coughlin get into the playoffs at 9-7 or 10-6 and beat an undefeated Patriots team in the Super Bowl. That regular season records don't mean much to me. It's what you do in the postseason. And Doug Pederson has won a playoff games with Nick Foles. No coach in the NFL that has coached Nick Foles has done that outside of Doug Pederson.
What he did with Foles is probably, that Super Bowl run was one of the most impressive coaching.
And not only that, here's another thing I want to get into, and then we'll end it with this. A lot of people question Doug Pederson since Frank Reich has left for the Colts. I think that's the dumbest thing ever. I think Frank Reich is a great coach. I think John DeFilippo is a great coach. I think those guys' role never happened in Philadelphia unless Doug Pederson gives them those jobs. Teams weren't lining up to give Frank Reich an offensive coordinator position in 2016. He was the scapegoat on the Chargers on Mike McCoy's staff when they started to shaft those guys. And nobody, after the Chargers fired Frank Reich, nobody was looking his way. It was Doug Pederson and his friendship with Frank Reich that got him the OC job in Philadelphia.
I think Pederson.
John DeFilippo has been on a different team every year he's left the Eagles.
One of Pederson's best traits is his willingness to get ideas from others. His room isn't it despite his success. He doesn't come off prideful or his ego is
which is
going
important
to
for winning.
It's huge, man.
That's an Andy Reid mantra that I think that
absolutely you have to have like an open table like conversation there. I mean, to sustain success, and then create more ideas. And then you see it too. He's bringing in new people. It seems every year or so, and it's not like overwhelming, but as if you're just getting a change of culture. But when you can get these new ideas and new minds, I think it goes huge for advancing your offense.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. But Doug Pederson is the structure. Doug Pederson is the play caller. Doug
Sorry, I
Pederson
was
is what
doubling
brings
down
everything.
on what. Yes, correct.
No,
Sorry.
you're correct. Everything you're saying is right, and I think that's what separates Doug Pederson from maybe the rest. Because I don't think Sean McVay probably does that in retrospect. I think he probably does his own thing. That's why everybody calls him a genius. But
Shanahan too.
Yeah, Shanahan too. But so yeah, I agree with you. Doug Pederson is open to different type of philosophies and incorporating him into his system. But Doug Pederson is the structure. Doug Pederson is what puts the pieces together. Doug Pederson is the play caller. Doug Pederson is what propelled Carson Wentz, called him to an MVP caliber season. Doug Pederson is the play caller, the guy that was in Nick Foles' ear to help win him, to guide him to a Super Bowl MVP and a victory over the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick, and Tom Brady.
And I have
these 9-7 seasons lately are completely a result of injuries. They've lost numerous amount of starters that they haven't been able to overcome. Because it's one thing to be injured and lose a starter and then have the depth to replace him. It's another to lose a starter and not have the depth to replace him. Alas, Deshaun Jackson, Mike Wallace the year prior, so on and so forth, because we've all known all the injuries the Eagles have gone through.
And I want to hit on it too, because you made a good point, is his Pederson, when he gets hands on quarterbacks, and well, I don't want to say all, but he got his, let's not forget when Wentz came out of North Dakota, it's not as if Wentz was this, I mean, yes, he was a promise. He went number 2, but he was a raw prospect. And for him to step in year 1 and have the success he did is a reflection of Pederson and obviously the coaching staff. And then you already mentioned Foles and his success. I'm really excited to see what he can do with Jalen Hurts. I want to see what he can, because Jalen Hurts is a raw prospect. And I want to see, it's going to be exciting to see what Pederson could do when he gets his hands on him. I mean, because
that's
it seems as if.
For Carson Wentz's development, that's a good point, actually, that I just think of that you raised, that I'm going to elaborate on a little bit more, that you might even be like, wow, like, that's true. When he started Carson Wentz right away, that's not even how the Eagles started Donovan McNabb's career that Doug Pederson was a part of. That's not even how Andy Reid started Patrick Mahomes' career that Doug Pederson wasn't a part of, but he was there with Alex Smith, was there with Andy Reid and all that stuff. So Doug Pederson went outside the box of what his predecessors have usually done and put his rookie quarterback out there right away to learn right away and play right away, and has developed him into, since then, because even then, that was a tough season for the Eagles. They were 7-9. They had no receiving options. Once his box score suggests he struggles, but we all know from his playing and what he did out there on the football field, he was a very talented rookie quarterback.
Heck yeah. It didn't result in wins.
I think you have to get Doug Pederson more credit with how he can develop and develop quarterbacks, because of, like I just said, he took a route that Andy Reid wasn't even confident enough to take. It took a while to put Donovan McNabb out there. It took a whole year for Andy Reid to feel comfortable to play Patrick Mahomes. So it's interesting, because even when the Eagles drafted Kevin Kolb, it took a couple of years for the Andy Reid to feel comfortable to even name him the starter. So Doug Pederson went outside the box of what he learned, and so far it's worked, because Carson Wentz has developed into the team's franchise quarterback.
Yes, sir. Dougie P.
Yeah, we need all the hate and the stuff to stop on Doug. So here's what we're going to say to end the show. Doug Pederson is an undisputed top 5 head coach in the NFL. The CBS list is wrong.
Correct.
Rodney McLeod is super underappreciated starter on this team, and Tyler and I discussed exactly why and brought up some statistics to show you why. And Zach Ertz
is the best tight end in the NFL. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I'm just kidding.
Do you really think he's the best tight end in the NFL, though?
I think that if there was a redraft, I would have no problem selecting him as my first tight end. Yes. I
do have Kittle as my tight end 1. I have George Kittle as my tight end 1. But
I don't.
Zach Ertz and Travis Kelce are interchangeable for me.
Can I have a take on Kittle? I think
ahead.
Kittle's an incredible tight end. I think his receiving ability is a bit raw. I think Kelsey and Ertz are kind of in their own tier. Kittle, I don't want to exaggerate this, but I think Kittle gets a lot of his production from being in Shanahan's offense.
I know it helps. I know that run game helps, but he has his quarterback's not that very accurate.
Agreed. Yeah,
had a ton of missed opportunities last year. I think he had 24
I'm not trying to downplay Kittle. I mean,
that's your opinion, and I understand it. You made a good valid points of why you feel that way. I think Zach Ertz, you can argue as tight end too. I think I would, if I had to make a list, I would put him at 3, but I could change him between Kittle. I mean, not Kittle, excuse me. I could change it between Travis Kelce and him easily.
One thing's for sure is Rob Gronkowski is not better than Zach Ertz at this point.
Not going into the 2020 season. No, not going into the 2020 season. Absolutely not. No. So, thanks for tuning into Eagles Brawl. Again, Tyler Steege here with Conor, Myles. Johnny Page will be back soon. You can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating review on Apple Podcasts. Any questions for the show that you want to answer on air, just go ahead and shoot them to us. We'll definitely answer them. Tyler is a huge Zach Ertz fan, and he wants you to know it.
Peace, guys.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Peace.